Hi, I'm Desi Serna. Welcome to Fretboard Theory Chapter 1. In this lesson, you get to know the best way to learn the notes on the fretboard. Knowing the notes is necessary in order to study guitar theory and develop a better understanding of music. Whether you have been playing guitar for a long time or only a short time, you can never know the notes on the fretboard too well. Knowing the notes is necessary in order to study guitar theory and develop a better understanding of music. In order to play scales, chords, progressions, and other things on the fretboard, which is the focus of the Fretboard Theory course, you need to keep track of keys and root notes. Now, I must admit that studying notes is not my favorite thing to do, but it enables me to play the things that I love. This will be true for you too, so keep this in mind as you work your way through this lesson. You'll be prepared to get into the fun fretboard theory stuff after you learn the notes on the fretboard. It helps to know that you do not need to memorize all of the notes on the fretboard. Most guitarists use strings 6 and 5 as their guide, and then trace notes on other strings using octave shapes. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through most of the notes on the fretboard, but then I'll show you how you can simplify your approach and focus mainly on strings 6 and 5. So let's get started. The musical alphabet includes the letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G. On a piano, these notes are the white keys, but they are only good for playing in one relative major and minor key. If you want to play in other keys, then you would need additional pitches that the white keys on the piano don't provide. This is where the black keys on the piano come from. The black keys provide additional pitches in between some of the white keys so that you can play major and minor scales beginning on any note. The black key notes are called sharp or flat depending on how they are used. You play the white key and black key pitches on guitar too, but the guitar fretboard looks nothing like a piano. Learning the notes on guitar requires a different perspective and some extra work. You begin this process by learning where the natural notes A through G are located, and then you fill in with flats and sharps. You can play the notes A through G by beginning on the 5th string A. When you look at the fretboard diagram to learn the location of the notes, you're seeing the fretboard upside down. This is the way that fretboard diagrams are used because it matches the way you see the fretboard when you lean over and look at it while you're playing. Remember that guitar strings are counted from the bottom up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's A. A is followed by B at the 2nd fret, C at the 3rd fret, D at the 5th fret, E at the 7th fret, F at the 8th fret, and G at the 10th fret. These notes A through G are equivalent to the white keys on a piano. The notes in between are the sharp and flat black keys on a piano. We'll get to these other notes in a few minutes. For now, let's just focus on the natural notes A through G. The first thing I want to draw your attention to are the notes that are right next to each other. These notes are B and C at frets 2 and 3, and E and F at frets 7 and 8. You will more easily learn the notes on other strings when you remember that these notes are always 1 fret apart. B and C and E and F. Always. All the other notes have pitches in between them. In other words, they are 2 frets apart. The 1 fret and 2 fret distances between notes represents the most basic type of music interval you can play. These intervals are called whole step and half step. On guitar, a whole step is 2 frets, and a half step is 1 fret. So A to B is a whole step. B to C is a half step. C to D is a whole step. So is D to E. E to F is a half step. And F to G is a whole step. Notes are always spaced this way, no matter on which string you play or in which position you play. You can make it easier for you to remember the notes on the fifth string by associating them with common chords in relative tuning. For example, the open fifth string A is the root of all types of open A chords, including A major and A minor. So you should instantly know that the fifth string open is A because of these basic chords. If you're not familiar with these basic chords, then this fretboard theory course is going to be too advanced for you. You can know that the note at the second fret is B because it's the root of a B7 chord. And the C at the third fret goes together with an open C chord. So right away, you should be able to remember notes A, B, and C. A, B, C. The note at the fifth fret is D. It matches the fourth string D open and is used for relative tuning. Now you have notes A, B, C, D. What's next on the alphabet? E, at the seventh fret. This E note is one octave higher than the sixth string open. These E notes are used together a lot to play guitar parts. Let's review. Now we have A, B, C, D, E. And remember, E and F are just a half step apart, so you play F at the 8th fret. And then you finish the musical alphabet with G at the 10th fret. When you get to the 12th fret, which is marked with a double dot on your guitar, you are one octave higher than you started, on another A note. Mathematically, this A note's frequency is double the frequency of the open A string. It's a higher version of the same note. After the 12th fret, all the notes repeat in the next octave. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The fret markers on your guitar correspond to the notes after the 12th fret in the same way they correspond to the notes before the 12th fret. In other words, the first fret marker down here is C, and the first fret marker after the 12th fret is also C. The second fret marker down here is D, and the second fret marker after the 12th fret is D. The third fret marker is E, and the third fret marker past the 12th fret is E. In case you're curious, the position of the fret markers on guitar is based on harmonics. Harmonics are beyond the scope of this chapter. So for now, just know that these fret markers are used as landmarks so you can better navigate your way around the fretboard. And by the way, I'm playing a Paul Reed Smith, or PRS, guitar. These guitars are known for their trademark bird inlays. Most guitars just have dots. Now that you are familiar with the notes along the fifth string, take a few minutes to review them. Review them in both directions and call out the note names as you go, like this. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A. When you're ready, resume this lesson and learn the notes on the sixth string. The notes on the sixth string begin with the open E, which is the root to all types of open E chords, including E major and E minor. Remember that E and F are just a half step apart. This means that the very next fret, the first fret, is F. This is the root of an F bar chord, which guitarists typically play only a portion of, like this. The third fret is G and the root of an open G chord. After G, the musical alphabet returns to A. The fifth fret is A. It matches the fifth string open, and it's used for relative tuning. Let's review the notes we have covered on string 6 so far. E, F, G, and A. Now let's continue with the notes past the fifth fret. When you play A at the fifth fret here, it's like starting on the fifth string open. A, B, C, D, E. Here are the same notes on string 6. A, B, C, D, E. A to B is a whole step. B to C is a half step. C to D is a whole step. And D to E is a whole step. The E at the 12th fret of string 6 is an octave higher than the same string open. And all the notes past the 12th fret are the same as all the notes before the 12th fret. E, F, G, A, B, C, D. Now that you are familiar with the notes along string 6, take a few minutes to review them. Review them in both directions and call out the note names as you go, like this. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. There are two E strings on guitar, the sixth string and the first string. The layout of notes on the first string is the same as the layout of notes on the sixth string. The only difference is the notes on the first string are 2 octaves higher than the notes on the sixth string. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. So far, you have learned the notes on strings 5, 6, and 1. In a few minutes, I'll show you how you can keep track of the notes on other strings using octave shapes. But for now, you could play through the notes on other strings by following the whole step and half step intervals like this. The fourth string open is D. D to E is a whole step. E to F is a half step. F to G is a whole step. G to A is a whole step. A to B is a whole step. B and C are right next to each other. And C to D is a whole step. You can do the same thing beginning on the open third string G. G to A is a whole step. A to B is a whole step. B and C are right next to each other. C to D is a whole step. D to E is a whole step. E and F are right next to each other. And F to G is a whole step. Beginning with the open second string, this is B. B and C are right next to each other. Then you have D, E, F, G, A, B. And we've already covered the first string, so you've now played through all the main notes on all of the strings. Before moving on to these octave shapes I keep telling you about, you need to learn how to fill in the spaces between the natural notes with sharps and flats. These are the black keys on a piano. Let's start on the fifth string. The open fifth string is A, and the second fret is B. The note in between would be called either A sharp, meaning 1 half step higher than A, or B flat, meaning 1 half step lower than B. Sharp means higher, flat means lower. Whether to call this note in the first fret sharp or flat depends on in which key you play. If you play in the key of F using the F major scale, Then you call the note B flat because it falls in the position of B in the musical alphabet. F, G, A. The next note needs to be B, and this is the actual pitch you need for this scale, and since it's 1 fret lower than a B natural, we call it B flat. You wouldn't want to call the note in the first fret of string 5 A sharp, because then you would have two A's in the scale, and you wouldn't have a B. F, G, A sharp, C. Since that first fret note falls in the position of B in the musical alphabet, you call it B. And since it's 1/2 step lower than a B natural, you call it B flat. If, however, you play in the key of F sharp using an F sharp major scale, you call the note in the first fret A sharp, because now that note lands in the position of A in the musical alphabet. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp. In this case, you wouldn't want to call the note B flat, because then you would have two B notes and you wouldn't have any type of A note. So the first fret in this case is A sharp. So notes are either sharp or flat depending on what key you're in. You learn more about keys and major scales as you advance in the fretboard theory program. For now, all you need to know is notes in between the natural notes can be either sharp or flat. So now let's play the sharps and flats that fall between the other notes. The note in between C and D is either C sharp or D flat. The note in between D and E is either D sharp or E flat. The note in between F and G is either F sharp or G flat. And the note in between G and A is either G sharp or A flat. And you can do the same thing on string 6. The note in between F and G is F sharp or G flat. Between G and A, you have G sharp or A flat. Between A and B, you have A sharp or B flat. Between C and D, you have C sharp or D flat. And between D and E, you have D sharp or E flat. Now that you know the location of the natural notes on strings 5 and 6, and you know how sharps and flats work, you can bring the whole fretboard together by using octave shapes. You can keep track of notes on other strings by connecting them to string 5 or string 6 using simple octave shapes that are easy to finger. This is how it works. Here's an A at the 5th fret of string 6. If you go over 2 strings and up 2 frets, you will have an A in the next octave. This shape will produce an octave no matter where you are on the fretboard. So here's B, the 7th fret, and here's B an octave higher. Here's C, and C an octave higher. D, D an octave higher. E, E an octave higher. If I come down here, here's G, G an octave higher. F, F an octave higher. And I can take this shape down one more fret and play the open E, and then come over 2 strings, up 2 frets for the octave E. This same octave shape works when you're playing notes on the 5th string as well. Here's C at the 3rd fret of string 5. And if you go over 2 strings and up 2 frets, you will have C an octave higher. Here's D, D an octave higher. E, E an octave higher, and so on. Whenever you need to identify a note on string 3 or 4, you can always trace it to string 5 or 6 using these octave shapes. For example, if you needed to know the note at the 10th fret of string 4, you can trace it back to its octave at the 8th fret of string 6, and identify it as C. If you needed to know what the note is at the 7th fret of string 3, you can trace it back to its octave at the 5th fret of string 5 and identify it as D. You also play octave shapes between strings 4 and 2 and 3 and 1, but they look a little bit different. If you are familiar with relative tuning, you know that all strings are tuned at the 5th fret, with the exception of the 2nd string, which is tuned at the 4th fret. Tuning the guitar like this has become what's known as standard tuning. This tuning became standard because it allowed for the most amount of chords and scales to be comfortably fingered. As just one example, bar chords wouldn't be possible if this tuning wasn't in use. Because the 2nd string is tuned 1/2 step lower, you need to reach up an extra fret when you play octave shapes. So for example, here's A at the 7th fret of the 4th string, and to play an octave higher, you need to reach over 2 strings and up 3 frets. There's your octave A. And you can use this shape anywhere along the 4th string. Here's B, and B an octave higher. C, D, and so on. This same octave shape works when you play between strings 3 and 1. Here's A at the 2nd fret of the 3rd string, and here's A an octave higher on the 1st string. Here's B, B, C, D, E, and so on. You can also play octave shapes on guitar that are 3 strings apart. Anytime you're on the 1st string, you can reach over 3 strings and up 2 frets. In this case, both notes are A. Here's B, and B an octave lower, C, and C an octave lower, D, and D an octave lower, E, and so on. This also works when you play between strings 2 and 4. Here's C at the 1st fret of string 2, and if you reach over 3 strings and up 2 frets, you can play C an octave lower. Here's D, D, E, E, and so on. In this case, you can use this octave shape as a jumping off point for the 5th string too. When you play notes along the 5th string, you can reach over 3 strings and back 2 frets to play an octave higher. You can also play an octave shape between strings 3 and 6, although I find this shape to be less useful. Here's A at the 2nd fret of the 3rd string. If you reach over 3 strings and up 3 frets, you'll have A an octave lower. Here's B, B an octave lower, C, C an octave lower. And with this shape, you could use the 6th string as your jumping off point. Here's C. If you go over 3 strings and back 3 frets, there's C an octave higher. Here's D, D an octave higher, E, E an octave higher. To get to know the notes on the fretboard better, you can play a little game with yourself that involves tracing the notes using the different octave shapes you have learned. It works like this. I'll begin at A here on string 6. If you go over 2 strings and up 2 frets, you can play an octave A. And from this A, you can go over 2 strings and up 3 frets for another octave A. You could also put your ring finger on this A, and you could go over 3 strings and back 2 frets for the octave A. You could also place a finger on A at the 5th fret in string 1 and trace it down an octave to this A, and then trace this A down an octave to this A. Let's keep going. You can trace A to A to A. From here, you can move over 3 strings and up 2 frets to A. From this A, you can go up an octave. And from this A, you can go up an octave. From this A, you can go down an octave. You could go up an octave here, or down an octave here. Take a minute now to play through these A notes using these octave shapes like I have demonstrated, and then do the same thing for other notes. Octaves aren't just used for tracing notes. They are also used for playing musical parts on guitar. You explore the different ways that guitarists use octaves to play musical parts in Fretboard Theory Chapter 9. It's part of the fun stuff I mentioned earlier. If you have purchased Fretboard Theory, then you could jump ahead to Chapter 9 now and take a look. Now that you are familiar with the notes on the fretboard, you're ready to make music with scales, chords, progressions, and more of the fun stuff. Coming up next, in Fretboard Theory Chapter 2, you start working with the pentatonic scale, which is used to play guitar riffs, solos, and bass lines. But if you're primarily a rhythm guitarist, you might want to jump ahead to Chapter 3 and learn the caged chord forms, or Chapter 6 and learn guitar chord progressions and playing by numbers.